Okay,
I'm gonna go make it easy.
good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting, January 16, 2018. And we'll ask if our town administrator, David Williams, can please read the agenda, and then we'll vote whether to make any changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. There are 4 items we recommend to be removed. The first item will be, on the night, will be a public comment, and then consideration of financial matters. We'll have acceptance of library gift with Mary Moore, Chair, Board of Library Trustees, and then a discussion of general obligation bond with Heidi Doyle, the town treasurer, and Maureen Priscilla, financial advisor from Eastern Bank. And then 2018 annual town meeting, consideration of budget and departmental budgets, recycling committee, building inspector, town accountant, council on aging, remove police department, and then community maintenance and development. Consideration of capital items, there are none known at this time for this evening. And then consideration of town meeting warrant and various articles. Remove NOI Board of Selectmen's ineligibility for town employment, George Shea. Remove NOI recall bylaw for elected officials, George Shea. And then the next item would be NOI regarding proposed change to select board. Under routine business, town administrator report, consideration of payroll warrant, and then under selectmen items, reports, and then minutes, there are none. And then meeting calendar is January 25th, 2018 is the next meeting. Then executive session, not to return to open session, under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to potential threatened litigation, since an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the town if so declared by the chair, library, and the other possible item is removed, which was MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with CM&D.
That's being postponed to another week.
Right. So there are 4
All right, so we have a
items.
motion to, hi, Paul. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda with those changes recommended by the town administrator?
So move.
All right, second.
I have
You have
a-
another change? Okay.
I have another change.
Okay.
I want to ask the board to consider approving an insurance payment that I had adjusted during Dave Williams' absence,
Can we put that up under this financial matters?
wherever you'd like.
Okay, let's do that. Do you have information on that, Paul?
I had sent it around by email.
Okay, so there's nothing new. I don't think we saw the pictures, but that's fine. All right, so do we have a motion with those amendments?
So move. Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, good. So, public comment, is there any? No? Okay, acceptance of library gift. I think it's Jim Murphy standing in for Mary.
I'm sorry, Jim.
Jim Murphy, library trustee, chair of the finance committee, and with me, a fellow library trustee, Bruce Ekman. Mary Moore couldn't be here tonight. She's really doing a great job in leading us. So the library has a gift of $918,808.82 that it would like to make to the town for the purposes of the library renovation. As before, with our earlier gift of $2,845,833, I think it requires acceptance by the Board of Selectmen on behalf of the town. We'd ask you just to accept it for only the library purposes, with any excess, if any, to be used for library purposes. The source of the gift is the generosity of many townspeople, and thanks to our capital campaign committee. This will together now equal gifts from the library trustees and the capital campaign committee of $3,764,641.82. And we're available, Bruce and I, to answer any questions you may have. And we, are proud to represent the library and all the things that it brings to the town, because I think it is just a funnel for all of the gifts that we get from all the people in the town and supporting the library, and we're proud to represent them.
That's great. Any comments, questions?
Well, just to thank all the donors, and thank you, the library trustees. This is a fabulous outpouring of support for this project, and we can see it taking shape across the way here from the town hall. It's fun to watch it come to fruition. Thank you for everything you've done.
Welcome.
Yes. Anybody else? So we need a motion to accept this gift, right? And
Move that-
devote it to library purposes?
Second.
Okay. All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bruce, did you want to add anything, or you're all set?
No, I'm the wingman, too.
Okay. Let's see, now we have our town treasurer Heidi Doyle and Ms. Pacella of the Eastern Bank. Pacella. Eastern Bank.
Good evening. So thank you very much for the time. This is my first time presenting for you in front of a bond, so please bear with me. I'm not sure what questions you're going to have or how the procedure is going to go. I brought Maureen Pacella from Eastern Bank, who is going to help present the process involved, the timing that we're looking for, the amounts, and then to see if you have any questions. We'd like to be able to proceed. I'm not sure that there's going to be a vote tonight, but if you have questions, I would like to be able to come back at the next town meeting and wrap that up to proceed with the process. Timeline we're looking for is for March 5th issuance of bond. Maureen, could I turn it over to you?
Can I just add something? Heidi and I had talked about that it would be good for her to come in and talk about the bonds before they actually come into a meeting for your final signature and vote. So this is what she's doing. It's a preliminary. You're not expected to vote and sign the bonds tonight.
Yeah, can we, so David, the materials we had were, I think, a sample from 2014 showing what we did in that year. Do we have anything this year that tells what's on the, what bond is going to pay for, or?
I think Maureen
Yes.
has.
Yes, we do have some handouts.
No, this is just an example. It's 2014. So there's, okay, good. Thank you.
We have done the research, and everything is set to package for bond counsel. What is remaining and is included in your letter package today is a letter with the useful life. There's 3 items that we need a useful life, and that will have to get, preferably within by the next board meeting, signed to include for the bond counsel.
Okay, so this is something you're going to ask us to vote on at the next meeting, is that it?
Yes, tonight if you'd like to, but or look over the package, have time to review it, and then vote in the next meeting.
It's best just to vote it when you have that one final document that you sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to know from you, David, I guess, what the basis for these useful life calculations is going to be, or maybe Heidi and
I
Maureen.
think she already looked at that.
Yeah.
So what you have there in your packet are a number of schedules. The first 2 schedules are identical, except one shows issuing bonds to essentially take out the bond anticipation notes that the town has been issuing over the last 4 years. And the other, and at the top you'll see in red which schedule is for the bonds, issuing bonds, and the other schedule shows not issuing bonds but renewing those bond anticipation notes that are currently outstanding, renewing them for another year, and adding new bond anticipation notes for projects that have not yet been borrowed for. So these projects are projects that have been authorized by the town for the years 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So we did do a bond issue in 2015, but the projects were not ready to be bonded at that time, and for various reasons. And since then, we have been borrowing, or the town has been borrowing, bond anticipation notes on an annual basis to finance the projects. So many of these bond anticipation notes go back to 2014, being renewed every year, and making principal paydowns each year as well. And some making principal pay down, some just paying interest. You're not required to make a principal pay down necessarily, unless you go into a 3rd year of borrowing a note. Then you are required to make a principal pay down. So that's what you see for the first 2 schedules. The long schedule that's on the legal paper would be all bonding, all of the projects that are currently authorized by the town, and the town has been spending money, or you intend to spend money within the next 6 months to 12 months. So, but basically, these are all of the projects that would be included in a bond issue. And the bond issue would total, there's a box to the far right showing the total bond issue of $3,910,000, which would include everything, including the $1 million for the library that the town needs to finance, which you have not financed even in a short-term ban yet. And the interest rate that I use here is a 2.75%, which is what we're seeing in the bond market for a true interest cost that the town of Sherborn would probably be looking at within the next month or so, if you were to sell your bonds in that time frame. The next page says annual debt service. This shows what you currently have outstanding in bonds in the first column, the first 3 columns, including the principal, the interest, and the total. The next 3 columns show what you would have outstanding if you include this issue, this $3.9 million, and the last 3 columns are what's currently outstanding plus the new issue. And if you look at the last column, you'll see what's a cumulative percentage principal retired. And for the most part, you have outstanding bonds, and all of your bonds would be retired in 10 years. What I have shown you here would be an addition of a 20-year bond issue to those 10 years. So now you'd have bonds outstanding for 20 years. So the last column shows the cumulative principal retired, and a number that the rating agency looks at is how much has been retired within the first 10 years. And I see here that it would be almost 80. It actually is 85%, which is a very good number. The last page, it would be the timeline. And I think this is why Heidi asked me to come tonight, because if you do decide you want to sell bonds now, the timeline is shortening. We'd be looking at having a credit rating review by Standard & Poor's probably the 2nd week in February, which is now only 3 weeks away. And I've highlighted the key dates for you. And then we'd be looking at selling bonds either February 20th or 21st in hopes that the bonds and the papers would be ready for the board to vote on that, vote to approve the award of the bonds and sign all of the papers on your meeting on February 22nd. With the bond closing scheduled for March 8th, in time to retire what you have outstanding in bond anticipation notes now. One thing I did neglect this long page, I also just wanted to note that I did show the tax impact, and this is typically a key number that selectmen like to look at. So the final 2 columns in that block would show if you were to sell your bonds and sell everything, with the maturity schedule I have presented here, and what the tax impact would be based on your 2018 assessed valuation, and what the tax impact would be on a single-family tax bill, which I get that number from the Department of Revenue's at-a-glance report, and the number used is $753,000.
What's the difference between that number and what it would be without this new bond issue? In other words, what are we at now?
Well, if you don't do the bond issue, then you'd need to continue renewing your notes. So that's why I am showing you the first 2 schedules, showing what it would look like if you sold bonds and what the total amount of your principal and interest would be in fiscal year 2019. So if you look at the schedule that shows issuing bonds in red at the top, and you look at the last 2 columns, you'd be selling, the interest rate would be about $107,000, and the principal would be $405,000. The other schedule shows what it would be if you renewed the notes and you added all of the projects that have not yet been financed but need to be financed because you're spending the money. And if you look at the last two columns of that schedule, you'll see that the interest would be using a 1.75% interest rate for a short-term rate. The interest amount would be $66,470. And the required principal pay down, it would be $179,000. That's with renewing your notes again and not bringing the projects to the bond market this year. And the reason why I might suggest that you do bring the bonds, think about bringing the bonds, the notes, and permanently financing them is simply because the interest rates are still very low. And I can only say that I don't really know what's going to happen in the future, except that they probably will go up.
Yes, the Federal Reserve has projected further increases. So the longer we wait, the more we're going to pay ultimately.
If you do the bonds and the short-term bands, constantly renewing them, the interest rates are probably going to go up, and at some point.
So you could lock them in at better rates today than next year or the year after.
Maureen, is there a limit of how many years you can roll a ban?
Yes.
Okay.
With the new Municipal Modernization Act, you now can renew bans for 10 years, but you do need to start making a principal pay down in the third year of the ban borrowing. So in the borrowing that has been taking place, some of these projects have been borrowed as bond anticipation notes since 2014. So many of these projects already do require a principal pay down.
So what you're missing, if you continue to roll bans up to the 10 years under the Modernization Act, each year you're going to be at risk for a higher and higher interest rate on that ban.
That's right. You know what the interest rate is now. We're probably looking at a 1.75 for a short-term rate, but you don't know what it will be next year. And you will start having to make principal paydowns for other projects, as well as the projects that you already need to make paydowns on. If you're, I guess what I'm saying is if you've already spent the money on the projects, or if you haven't yet spent the money, but you know you'll be spending the money within the next 6 months, I would suggest including it into a bond issue and selling the bonds in this time frame to pay off these other notes that are coming due in March.
So as our financial advisor, it's your best judgment, and your advice to us is to go ahead and issue a bond for $3 million.
If you
900.
expect to spend all the money for all of these projects, yes, I would say that would be my best recommendation.
I got a question.
If there are certain projects that you don't think you'll be spending the money on, then no, don't include them in this bond issue.
So, you might have gone over this, but I was trying to total it up. The last page of either of these, whether it's the bans or the bonds.
Yes.
It's 972,000 that I look at that isn't spent, even though it says bans outstanding. 195 is a check you're gonna write tomorrow, but are you saying we can bond it? It's not even purchased, you can bond it now? Where's that cash go?
Are you talking about the CMD purchases? That's.
This whole page isn't spent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like the cemetery one.
And the
Truck's
$1 million
coming
for the
tomorrow.
library, too.
That's not coming yet.
Right? Because we haven't spent that yet.
That's not touched.
Right, although that's ramping up,
Yeah.
and I know the
Maybe those
cemetery
ones
fund is
are
going up
much.
for bid, they haven't spent their 327 yet, but they plan to.
So I guess what I would say to you is, you'd have to look at each of these projects, determine if you're going to be spending the amounts that you've authorized, and if you are, and you plan on spending those within 6 months, then I would say
We should
include
just
it in
bond
the
it.
bond issue. Yes.
When you bond ahead of actually spending,
Well, you
does that
anticipate
cash go?
spending. It will go in the town's coffers until you spend the money.
that's cheap money anyway then.
Has actually nothing been spent on the library from town funds? I
You haven't
thought so.
borrowed any
Yeah,
money,
we
I
haven't
know
touched it.
that.
We have not
We haven't
borrowed.
borrowed
touched
against it.
anything.
No, we've been using the gifts.
Oh, why, is that here? I went right over that.
The library, the millions on the front
Yeah,
page
that
right here.
surprises me, Mike.
So there's
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 2 million.
there's 2 million we haven't touched.
They don't have
On
any
your,
money to
on the
spend
CM&D
because
trucks,
we
are those in the
haven't
next,
borrowed
those three all in the next 6 months?
The snow fighter, there's a dump
Two
truck.
trucks.
And the road improvements are
Road
on here.
improvements.
Road improvements will be probably not the next 6 months, the next 8. It'll be this construction season. I would bond it. That truck's tomorrow. She's writing that
Okay.
check tomorrow. The other ones are
The
month
police
or two out.
vehicles, are they,
I don't think they're in yet.
The police vehicles, one was already done, the next one's getting the emergency equipment, they said the 85,000 is gonna be spent. Cemetery funds said they're plan to go out for bid on their items in the spring, so they have not spent their money yet, but they do.
Same thing, it'll be this construction season.
So of the 5 items that we were looking at, it seemed to fit that 6 months or
Have we
maybe
spent the
8
wood,
weeks.
woodland and grading at 50,000, Sean?
Done. I don't know where it closed out. I never saw the numbers.
The library is gonna be ramping up, that we figured by March, April timeframe, we will be starting to probably dip into the town amount that this would nicely fit.
Yeah, if nothing else, we're gonna have to cover the gap,
Because by the time.
because
you
we'll
get-
run ahead of the
The grants are not
The
gonna be
grant.
in, so therefore, this would help cover.
right?
But
We
w-
we only collected 3 out of the 3/5 of the grant, so there's two more grant payments. One comes at project completion, and one comes 1 year after project completion. Each of them is about $720,000, each of those grant payments. So, from at least the library's perspective, we see the project's supposed to be completed now by July, so it's gonna be in the 6-month period of time. There's some delay, obviously, the biggest payment is at the end, there's always a 5% retainage on a $6 million plus project, that's 300 or 400,000 right at the end that comes out. So you're gonna see bigger amounts in the last couple of payments on the library project, so that's probably the May, June, July, August payments are probably gonna be the largest ones. So, when we had some conversation with Sharon, we thought that it's perhaps prudent to think about how the million gets funded, and then prudent to think about the timing of the reimbursement of the grant payments.
Which is another 1.5.
Probably in fiscal year 19 and one probably in fiscal year 20.
Right.
And
Both theoretically due to the contractor upon
Well, we
occupancy.
have to,
So we gotta float another 1.5 million.
Like, you might choose, just hearing the discussion here, you might choose on each of those 721s to do a ban for a year.
That's what
because you're
would be
gonna
a
get
short term,
them, and then,
right.
or do a ban for 2 years on the second one, because you're gonna get that money. And that might be more prudent than putting it out there, because those are gonna be paid through the grant receivable.
We will get reimbursed for those amounts, but we will have to front the money.
Right, you have to front the money, but they can do that in a ban on those, on the grant receivable.
And what's the advantage of financing the full amount of some projects that haven't started yet?
2.5%.
the 2 point, locking in at 2.75 right now?
2.75.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, pretty much, because
Inconceivable it's gonna go down.
we're making the assumption that rates are gonna go up this year, which I think is a pretty good
But
assumption.
we're also making the assumption that we're gonna need $327,000 for the cemetery, and we're gonna need
When I made,
this amount and that amount for other things.
right,
Yep.
and we can, by the time we actually go to bid the bond, this number can come down a little bit. We put in the highest amounts, and I've been talking to Chucky Blaney. She will hopefully get some bids back, and maybe if we can make sure that this is done before the time, 327 might come down a bit.
Yeah, what I had suggested to Heidi is she reach out to everybody that has projects and find out if they've spent the proceeds, and if they don't expect to expend the proceeds, and you've already borrowed bond anticipation notes, what you would do is pay down the bond anticipation note, if you still have the money in the town's coffers, which you would, I would imagine. And for those projects that you have not borrowed yet, just find out if they plan to borrow, and if they need the money, and if they believe that they'll be using this full amount of money or not. If you, by chance, bond more, then you end up finding, let's just say the cemetery is $327,000, and you end up only finding that it's completely finished with $300,000, you have $27,000. The Municipal Modernization Act also allows communities to use any amount that's $50,000 or less towards debt service, any unused bond proceeds that you may determine that has happened. So if you do overbond in any of these projects, you can use those amounts and pay down the debt service if it's 50,000 or less. If it's over 50,000, you would need to reappropriate it for another project of similar term.
At a town meeting.
Is that a total of 50 across the whole bond, or
No,
50 per an
50
item?
per item.
So Sean, like, what's the status of the stormwater project where we've got 120,000?
Haven't dived into the stormwater project as far as the costs
Can I
and
have
where they were
a
spent.
procedural issue here with this? The Board of Selectmen is not the best place for us to go through a long list of projects and for us to make guesses about what's been spent, what should be spent. So to some extent, this is a little premature. This should really go to the town administrator. The town administrator should take it, run with it, and then come back with the answers to all those questions from the different departments that are actually spending the money, rather than all of us here trying to go through a long list and try to figure out.
That's what I'm saying.
I just don't think that's a productive use. You may not have the latest up-to-date information.
So do you know if this stormwater's been spent?
There's money left in stormwater. Sean and I talked about it today, that we gotta pull the stormwater team back together so he can get acquainted with AECom and Allery working on stormwater. So there's money in there, but I don't know what the balance is.
Permits are now in
Paul,
effect.
Paul, I think these details will be worked out before we actually vote on it, but this was just to say, are we interested in bonding now? I think this is
So
the
David,
question
on-
that they're
Right.
asking.
Yeah,
Not get it, like you said, not getting into the
Not getting into the nitty-gritty
the
of each
nitty-gritty.
Could I suggest we don't get into the weeds?
Right.
You can suggest it, but I'm asking questions, Paul, so
Okay.
I'm gonna keep asking the questions. On the Woodland and Goulding Street, David, do you know if we've spent that money?
I thought that we had some left over. I mean, there are a couple of things here that, Heidi and I and Sharon will have to sit down
Okay,
and
yeah.
double check.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It looks like some of the stuff that is on here for full amounts, I
Right.
think we've either completed for less money,
Less.
or there may be some left over, or we may never end up completing some.
Yeah, there was, I think the original estimate was like 80,000 or something, and it was much lower than what was approved,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So you don't need a vote from us tonight?
What, can I,
Well, I
Mike, can
think
I
this-
ask a quick question? The delta between the interest rate for the bond anticipatory note and the bond is right now a little more than 1%. Is that fairly constant, or let's assume interest rates go up to 9%? Is that delta likely to be even greater?
It could be definitely greater.
Right.
Just for whatever reason, right now, short-term rates are going up faster than long-term rates. And let me just, I was going to bring that up. These buyers of your bonds actually want coupon rates of 4% and sometimes 4.5%, but they'll give the town a premium bid that you'll receive on the day of settlement. Or what we'll do with the premium is reduce the par amount of bonds. So you effectively get a true interest cost of somewhere around a 2.75%. So the underwriters that buy your bonds want to put higher coupon rates, and they're willing to pay the town money to do that. Just so you're not alarmed when you're seeing coupon rates, if you do decide to bond these that are not 2.75%. They may be 4% or 4.5%.
So the
but
fundamental question is, A, the dollar amount, which we need to decide on, and B, whether or not we agree that locking in at what we think will be a 2.75% interest rate
TIC,
makes
true
sense.
interest cost.
Right.
I don't know how we can make that kind of decision
can't.
without both the capital budget for this year being known and advisory's recommendations being known. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been told we're gonna have a budget shortfall already, and this is gonna increase that shortfall, so.
We've got somebody from.
Why is this gonna increase that?
No, you have a budget of 1.6 million for debt service, right?
It's in there? Same amount?
Not exact, but
I think it's actually,
ballpark.
what she has on here for debt service is 1,630,000, so this would be 1,529,000, so it's actually a little less than.
Well, it's less than we have,
Than we have.
even though our payments are higher.
That, the
But this
$1.6
is all
includes
commit-
all
doesn't
of your
cover all the committed
outstanding
stuff.
debt as well.
Does that debt service include the regional school debt, or is their debt included in their budget?
There's regional school in here.
Yeah, it's in here.
Oh, no, I'm saying, because they have separate debt service, but I think that's in their budget. Not including
Oh,
our
right,
portion,
yeah.
because they have their own debt service line item. Okay, great. That's what I wanted to,
Well, could I suggest that we answer like one or two of the questions that are being asked of us? I mean, are we interested in doing some bond of some amount at this point, or we want to say no?
Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah, I think it's wise to go through each of the projects, but the one I wanted to mention specifically is the library, which has a $1 million warrant article for the capital also, this year's town meeting. So if you're really going to bond the library project, you may want to roll that in if you can. We don't know
So they
what
want
the
more money,
improvements-
more capital money
Yeah,
for the library?
yes. It's one of the NOI items, I'm not sure what, I think you're reviewing it 2 weeks from tonight, I'm not sure.
I think it was 256,000.
Something like that, yeah.
It's Article 18 on the NOI list we got.
I don't know if you want to go
I
into
think
that.
we want to combine that, that's one big item that you want to look at before you make a comment.
But that's,
Well, it hasn't been passed
then you're
yet.
pushing this whole conversation out like 3 or 4 months.
this would
We're
be.
trying to bond what we're already committed to.
I don't think so, because I don't think the town has to have approved that, because the project is already approved.
It's gotta go to town meeting. And if you're gonna bond it, it's gotta
Yeah,
be
but
in
it's
the election.
included in this, I'm not sure where to start.
Project
Have the
is
7
not,
million,
going to change the project.
so we can borrow against that.
Thing is being approved by town meeting, it's an existing project.
I mean, I disagree with that assessment because we had a price that the town was putting up for that project. The price is changing. That's explicitly what we voted on at town meeting.
No,
It absolutely has to go to
well,
town meeting.
then you're right. Either delay decision 5 months, I'm trying to avoid incurring bonding costs twice for the library, that's what I was trying to do.
That assumes,
I would
A
think
lot.
that that would get rolled into some of the short-term bonds at the tail end of the project, because we're gonna have to float another $1.5 million on top of the million.
Well, they're curious.
But the million's in here.
But we authorized, did the town authorize the 7 million as initially back?
Yeah, we're not gonna bond the whole 7 though, because we've already,
No, but did that already, the town already approved the ability to bond that? That's, I'm wondering if you need to go to the town for another 250, if that's something that comes up, if that's already been approved at town meeting.
yeah, I would say we would have to go to town meeting because that was approved so we could get a grant for
Okay.
that amount. This has been a big shell game where money's
Okay.
coming out of the town's pocket continuously more than the town voted on. I would say absolutely.
Yeah, okay, because
We got to stop the bleeding on the library project for the town's finances.
yeah, I'm looking at this as to do our existing bans
Yeah.
and whatever's been on the radar already approved. Try and lock that in.
Maureen, is there, there's some sort of benchmark that the agencies use as a percentage of your total, your annual debt service cost compared to your, I think, your annual budget? Is that what the percentage is that they look at?
Yeah, they do look at percentages. I'm not sure what the percentage is.
Oh, no, you don't have to figure it
It-
out, but it's the total, it's the annual
I can-
total debt payment compared to the overall budget?
Right, right. It's a percentage of the total budget. That's
Okay.
right. The total debt service payment, which would be in
There's nothing else to, see, there's a little.
one of the handouts I had given you.
Okay.
Total principal and interest, if you included all of these projects that we're discussing into a bond issue, and the bond issue ends up being 3.9 million.
So when you see the debt being retired here, if you wanted to maintain a steady level, whatever room is freed up, that's your debt capacity, basically, that you would be able to add additional debt each year. Okay.
And that's why I included the outstanding debt, so you could see what your outstanding debt looks like and where your drops are.
Okay.
And, I mean, it could be you may decide to issue only part of this as bonds and then borrow notes for some of these other projects.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so you'll bear down on that a little bit, David, with Sharon and.
Diane, wasn't he here for the dog thing?
We don't have a dog.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll continue to look at it.
okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, look.
Next item. Yes,
Thought it was in the NOI.
yeah, sure.
probably the longest-serving member of the Board of Trustees for the library.
Yep.
It's a deep pleasure for us to be able to work with the bankers, the Board of Selectmen, and put you in contact with the donors of this town who've done so much to support this. It's a tribute to all, and you'll see that moving forward. So, thanks.
And thanks to the donors, too. Appreciate that comment. Okay. Next is, this, Paul, your item, your insurance item. So go.
Oh, yes, I want to ask the board to approve a $500 payment that's below our insurance deductible. I adjusted the claim during the absence of the town administrator, including discussing it with the claimants and consulting with the police department and the CM&D department and with Diane Moores. And to the best of my ability, I've determined this is something that should be paid. So I request the board to pay it.
Do you want to explain what it is, Paul?
Yes, we had a special town meeting in December 6th. There was many people who attended it, more than we had originally anticipated. There was an issue of finding parking for everybody. We had opened the CM&D garage facility and invited people to use that facility. A couple in town, residents of the town, took advantage of that opportunity, parked their car at the CM&D garage, went to the special town meeting, and came back and found their car had been the subject of a hit-and-run accident. And this represents the portion that's not being paid by their insurance company for the repair of their car.
Paul, did you determine whether or not the town was at fault in any way for the accident?
No, I determined that the town had invited people to use this parking lot, was therefore had a special duty with regard to invited guests on property for parking purposes, and that the operators of the vehicle had no fault in connection with their parking of their vehicle.
Boy, I don't see, if I parked my car at the post office, which I did, and there was an accident, a hit and run, wouldn't expect the town to pay my insurance deductible on it. Similarly, if somebody parked at Pine Hill and that happened, to me, the key issue is who's at fault. If we can determine that, if the town's at fault, then I don't think it's a matter of paying the deductible. I think it's a matter of paying every penny of the expense. But absent that, I have trouble seeing, I think that's a bad precedent, and I don't understand the principle why the town should be reimbursing for a cost, a claim that the town has no fault.
I agree with you, Chuck. In fact, I was here at the Arts and Crafts Fair a few years ago, and our car got hit in the parking lot of Town Hall, and I paid my deductible on my own. I don't see it as a town responsibility to be paying people's deductibles when it wasn't. I mean, you park at your own risk.
Right. Every time the Mad Max CM&D plows knock over my mailbox, I fix it.
I want to clarify, that's the snow coming off the plow, not the plow hitting the mailbox.
Geez, all I know is
We
every year.
inspected the mailbox, there was no dents in it.
Yeah. All I know is every year I rebuild my mailbox like two or three times. But in all seriousness, if the town's at fault, then we should be paying every penny of it. But absent that fault, I don't see how that's any different than parking here or Pine Hill or at the post office. So I don't know.
Or in your mailbox.
Well, that's different.
I'm glad we're having this discussion, because I know Paul had requested that Diane and Sharon just pay this, but I thought it needed a vote, and I think I'm glad we brought it in front of the board. for this discussion. I think it's important that people hear this. Anybody else have any comments up here? Susan, you had a question?
Yeah, Susan Tyler. So I have a brand new vehicle. I had it parked out here. Within 2 weeks of being out here in this parking lot, which I am invited to park here, someone hit the back end of my car. I have no idea who did it. So can I come down and submit a claim to the town? I'm just curious because I've got damage on the car was only 2 weeks old. So can I make a claim? I was parked out here.
I think we're going to take a vote, and then you'll find out.
Thank you.
Do we want to vote on this? I think
Yeah,
Paul's got a
one way.
motion on the table.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Do we have a second for Paul's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Sean's second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Paul's motion? All opposed? You abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thanks, Paul. Okay, next we've got the town meeting, consideration of budgets, and we've got recycling committee.
Is this different than the book? The packet?
No, this is our, she said this was the
Really
same as the
worried.
book, right?
It's before cemetery.
Mr. Tyler, thanks.
Sure.
It looks like, I don't know if you want to make a presentation, or if you just,
No, we've level funded our budget as requested, and we have actually a committee that has some new dynamic people on it, and we're just getting through our first year without Carol Rubenstein as the long-term chair of the committee, and so we're getting our feet on the ground now, and there are some good ideas coming out of the committee. We also have some things happening in the recycling world. Some of you may have heard of China Sword, which is China is now putting its foot down about contamination in various kinds of waste, plastics, paper, things like that. And in fact, the company with which we contract to dispose of those things has like $180,000 worth of paper sitting in his lot that he can't sell because China has slowed down buying all that stuff. So the markets are tightening up. We may have some outreach programs to get better purification of the waste, less contamination in the waste that we're collecting for recycling and so forth. So there are some things on the table that are going to require some more work by us and possibly some more investment in informational services and things like that. So things are happening in the recycling world that are going to change things a little bit. So I think we can handle it with our level funded budget, along with some state grant money that we apply for every year and have received some of. So anyway, just asking for approval of our level funded budget. Well,
So moved.
okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Yeah, I think I saw your committee meeting, and it was a packed room.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
yes,
great.
Yes, one of our new members left her car open. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next is building inspector,
It's Chris Canny.
Chris.
Hello,
Hi, Chris.
how are you? So I am also presenting a level-funded budget, basically sticking to the sort of modest increase that Henry had asked for, I think, the previous budget year, which allowed for an increase in hours for my position and for the electrical inspector's position. We do anticipate a fairly moderate increase in the number of permits coming in the next year to 2 year period, based upon some of the planning board projects coming in. But at the moment, we're sort of maintaining, let's just say. I think we're not quite as high as we had been in fiscal year 2016, which had 315 permits issued. Last fiscal year had 260. Currently, right now, we're at about 116 for the the fiscal year that we're in now. So we're sort of running the same numbers. Abbey Road threw a whole lot of extra permits at us in those last couple of years, which also increased a lot of the fees that we took in. But some of these other projects coming down the pipeline will also give us a little bump here and there along the way. But I expect we'll be able to manage. Part of my budget includes a little bit of additional time that I'd like to be able to have as flexible money to allot for a local inspector as required, based upon demand. So at the moment, everything's running along just fine. I'm paying myself for 22 hours a week. I'm budgeted for 27 hours a week. That extra 5 hours can be allocated to pulling in an extra person periodically as we need to.
That's a backup or vacation
Correct.
time?
Or it's, it's a situation where we get into the summer months where it's real heavy construction season. We need to get additional inspections beyond what I can do in this sort of odd hours that I have to keep. We can pull in a backup inspector to do an hour or two here or there to fill in the gaps.
So one of the things we did with your predecessor was work through some increases in the permit fees. Do you know how much of this budget is funded by permit fees now? So of the 88,000 roughly?
So fiscal year 2016, we brought in 160,000 and change. Fiscal year 2017, we brought in 212,000 and change. This year, we're at 52 through the end of the second quarter. So I anticipate that we'll be fully funded by permit fees. That's just building permits. Obviously, there's electrical and plumbing permits I didn't include in this list. And obviously, those could go quite a bit higher if we see Washington Street or Coolidge Street or 59 North Main come in. Those permits really do kick things up quite a bit.
Yep.
So,
And there's no fee on the library permits, so.
yeah,
That's
that
gonna
was a big-
tax him throughout this year. There's no
Right.
income from that, obviously.
Right.
But still, this is a department that pays for itself.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
On page 6,
Yes.
you're indicating salaries at 1.5% cost of living increases,
Yes.
but I thought that was 2%.
I found that out after the fact, and I believe
Sharon, you adjusted it.
that was going to be adjusted, yeah.
It says here 1.5%.
Yeah, that's his note, but go to the next page. Page
That-
7's got it.
That's what he submitted his budget on, but the actual payroll sheet, Sharon adjusted.
Then my next question was, you had a sentence that said, and I just didn't understand it, so I wanted to ask you to explain it. You said, the budget allows for, looks like 28 hours for the building inspector with small reserve available for assistant inspector. But when I look at the chart, it's got 27 hours, not 28.
Well, it shouldn't say 28. So there,
It's 26, Paul.
yeah, so what originally happened was to try to absolutely level fund the budget, I had reduced the hour from 27 to 26 to be able to maintain the mileage and material that was in here that's somehow gotten
Well,
deleted.
is 27 the right number?
27 is the correct number.
Well, the
Which is
third
this-
line down says, this is a reduction in hours from the previous year's budget at 27 hours a week. How is 27 a reduction from 27?
Again, so this was based upon my initial submittal to David, which I think, when did we meet, David, a week or so ago? We talked about having this adjusted before being presented to you. Obviously, that didn't get deleted
Seems
from
like the numbers were updated, but the notes were not.
Correct.
Okay. So the next page is the one that governs for budgetary purposes?
Yes.
I get a quick question. It's only a delta of $800, but we've got a bogey of $600,000 reduction that we're looking for. So on Form 2, line item 5380, contractual services is listed at $1,200 for the FY 2019 request. On Form 3, 2 pages later, line item for 5380 is listed as $400.
That is for the electrical inspector's position, I believe each, if you go back to,
Each of them has 400.
each one has 400.
Got it. Okay, so that's the
There's
roll-up
three-
for
yeah,
all
there's three
three.
sections. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay,
I'll move to approve the budget as presented.
Second.
okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye, thanks.
Diane, that
Thank
was,
you.
Diane, that was
Thanks,
me
Chris.
on the second, not Paul. I beat Paul by.
Okay, accountant.
You can have the next one.
Da-da-da-da.
Into the hot seat.
I followed the guidance, and I have level funded our budget for FY '19. The expenses, well, compensation is myself. I have a 30-hour assistant town accountant, and then we have a 40-hour payroll HR person. That's remaining the same. And as far as expenses go, again, it's flat from last year. Moderate, modest supply budget. And then the biggest portion of our budget is contractual services, which would be the data processing fees for our general ledger, which is VADAR, and it's contractually obligated. I followed the contract. We also use Harper's for our payroll. We have our annual audit with Melanson Heath. We also have the library audit, Pine Hill School activity audit there. The actuarial, GASB 45, we didn't actually have to have that done this year, so we're going to see that our consulting fees for FY '18 are going to come in a little less. Next year is when we're going to actually have that done. So I just left it in there, but in terms of FY '18, we're going to see our contractual expenses less.
Can I just ask you a procedural question?
Sure.
I have 2 pages that say that your budget is one number, and then I have 2 other pages that have that's differently configured. And I'm trying to figure out which am I supposed to be
Look in your book.
following.
Well, if you look at Form 1, it's got our salaries at $184,000 and our expenses at $82,710, so a total of $266,717.
But I have this form that has materials and supplies.
That's the second page, Paul. That's form number 2. If you look at the upper right corner.
All right, so they came
Yeah,
out.
this Form number 2 just goes into more detail. Form number 1 just says compensation expenses, which is the way it gets voted on at town meeting. And
The
then if you-
expenses rolls in 5440, 5380, and 5700 together.
I think in the packet, for some reason, it was in a different order, Paul. I
Oh.
think in the book, it's actually in order, form number 1.
Oh,
form
yeah,
number
you should
Yeah,
definitely be
I'm
looking at
using
the
the ones
book.
in the
Yeah,
packet.
that's why I
Yeah.
said to use your book.
And the other question would be, it says in the notes again that the increase is at 1% as opposed to 2% under salaries. Didn't we agree on 2%?
It's 2%, yeah. I don't know where it says, what are you looking at?
In your
that says-
notes section.
Notes were done before December 31st, and then after that,
Yeah.
we got the final
Right, the
lines.
decision was made after everything was,
And you went in and
Guidance
adjusted
came
all
out.
the payroll sheets.
yeah, you'll see that every single one was adjusted to
Roll up to the front end.
2%.
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't do the arithmetic, I was just reading the words
Okay.
that said that it was adjusted
Okay.
by 1%, and it wasn't, it was adjusted
Okay.
by 2%,
Okay.
is what I'm hearing, so, great. And then my other question was that the jump on the employee, where you were doing something different somewhere with the treasurer. Could you explain that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
There were,
Again, it's in the notes, 5135-106.
Okay, the interesting thing
120.
about these notes is I didn't prepare this. It's not in your book. I really did not do this. Where did this come from? It does,
Is it an old set of notes?
Yeah,
from a
this is
previous
not-
year?
Did you
This
grab
is-
the tab that was already?
yeah,
there?
it's
So,
not in your book. I didn't prepare this. I don't know where it
Those
came
are
from.
Irene's notes. Throw those away.
Yeah.
Stop reading
Those are
those.
not those are not for this year. It says
You
2014.
can read
up
mine.
at
I
the
did
top.
mine.
2014, oh yeah, that's definitely, no wonder you're
So it
confused.
printed out for the packet, but not
I
in the
didn't do
book.
that.
It all sounded like such a.
Somehow
good
it got into the packet, but it's not.
Not me. It's
relevant.
not, it's
But they
not
got
in your book.
adjusted to 2019
Like deja vu.
numbers.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I didn't even know what you were looking at.
Use the book. You should
Yeah.
be using the book anyway. It's clearer.
I read this, I was given the packet, I read it to prepare for the meeting. I can't prepare for the meeting here at the meeting, I have to go with what was given to me.
Yeah,
I don't know how that got in there, so that was obviously me.
Gremlins.
I'll take credit for
Blame it on the IT
Selectmen
guy.
office gremlins.
It's Kevin's
it.
fault.
He's been on the job.
You put papers in the packets. All right. So we have a motion for this budget, or we
So
wanna-
move.
So, second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Okay, so we're supporting this budget.
thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Council on Aging.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is a good evening. It's not snowing yet, so it makes it even a better evening. The Council on Aging continues to work and support our seniors. It's a growing senior population, as you know, due to both the shift in the demographics, but also the increase in senior housing in town. We're very excited about that. We are also mindful of the budgetary constraints that everyone is working within. We continue to outreach and support our seniors, those who wish to age in place in the community. We're doing that by working with the seniors themselves as well as their families who have issues and concerns, whether their folks are in town or whether their folks are on the West Coast or down in Florida. We work and help them to provide a supportive network for their parents. We're also very grateful to our first responders who continue to work with us as a team in helping our seniors age in place. As far as our programming goes, we continue to work to engage our seniors. We have a weekly luncheon program that's every Thursday at the Pilgrim Church. At noon, we have both sponsors for people who financially contribute to our luncheon program, as well as those who actually come and cook for us. That takes a big weight off our shoulders in terms of funding. There's also nothing like getting a good home-cooked meal to draw 50 people into the Pilgrim Church, so we really want to thank the folks who do that for us. We have exercise programs, so they just don't eat, they come and exercise as well. We have Qigong, which is new this year, and it is being underwritten by Bay Path Elder Services. We also have a strength and fitness program, a walking club, and we have a partnership with the Longfellow Fitness Club in Natick for water aerobics, so seniors can exercise just about every day of the week if they choose. We have a men's group, which has lunch monthly at the Heritage, and this is underwritten by the Metro West Health Foundation. We're trying to get the guys to just come out and talk and have a good time. We find that the men in particular, as they age, are a socially isolated group, and this gets them out and they reconnect with friends, which is a great support network for them as well. Monthly, it attracts between 50 and 20 men. Our lifetime learning continues to be a huge success and a draw for seniors in our community and outside of our community. This semester, we have 7 courses going on. We have one on science, on the cosmos, Jane Austen, chaos, which is our actual political situation that we're in, opera, philosophy, swing music, and revisiting the Middle East. Today, we have 88 seniors enrolled, and the enrollment season just started about 3 weeks ago. So as time goes on, we'll get more and more seniors. Last semester, we ended up with about 140 seniors. And our semester runs from, actually, it was supposed to be tomorrow, but if you are taking the Cosmos, we are postponing that class, and it will be held at the end of the semester, and it will continue through early May. We continue to collaborate with Dover and Westwood on trips. That's an economic need that we have. And we're doing, this Friday, we're off to the Worcester Art Museum. In March, we'll go to the Flower Show and the Peabody Museum. We'll hit Nantucket in the summer, and we'll do an overnight in Saratoga Springs, just to name a few of the things we have planned. What's new for this year, we start a Let's Go to the Movies program. So we will be taking folks to the Regal Theater once a month. This month, we're focusing on Oscar-nominated films, and if it's a hit, we hope that we'll be able to continue this through the summer. We're also going to the BSO, the Chamber Players, on Sunday, and we have 2 more engagements with that. We have a Jumpstart Your Health, which is a 6-week program, which is we received through a grant through Bay Path Elder Services, and that's a holistic strategy from Dr. Roger Landry on preventative health and aging. We are also very grateful to the Friends of the Sherborn Council on Aging. They have underwritten the cost of the new link, which we're very, very proud of. Peggy Murchison Cohen has done the design work, and this goes to every household in Sherborn free of charge. So we want to thank our friends for that, as well as their financial support for special program we have, as well as the single Valentine's luncheon, which is coming up. So that's kind of my little commercial for the COA. Thank you for bearing with me on that. And does anyone have any questions on my budget?
So Karen, I had just a couple. One is the mileage charge. So you've level funded a lot of your budget, or you've taken just the 2% increase or moved funds around. But
Right.
on the mileage, you've dropped it, and it looks like actual in every year has been significantly higher than the 500. Is there a reason you don't expect to have that much mileage charge this year, or?
Mileage was more than just mileage. It was additional things, and what we did was we pulled the additional things that went with the mileage and put it back in terms of training and support where we had it. And so that's why I was able to drop it to 500.
So you're not going to be in need of a transfer later because the mileage charges are high?
I'm hoping not. I'm keeping a careful eye on that, and I'm hoping that that will be
I just wanted to be realistic.
It looks like you put the 1,500 up in the volunteer line. Is that?
That's volunteer. It's
Right.
and it's
you didn't
also
have
our
last year.
it's also our training. Yes.
Okay, and the other was on the positions, and you've combined 2 positions, it looks like, into a
Right.
director of programs, or a program coordinator,
It's a
rather.
program coordinator position, because right now, what we want to do is we want to be able to take a really global look at all the programming we're doing, not just lifetime learning, but we want to be able to develop a calendar that we can sit down and, by having a program coordinator, she'll have the ability to take a look at everything and make sure we aren't double booking programs as we go. And that's,
Yeah, and that looks like it's a little bit more than the 2%, which I don't inherently have a objection to it. I'm just wondering how that salary was determined for the
We,
coordinator.
we looked at other program coordinators in similar positions, and I went through personnel and had them sign off on it.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
I had a quick question. Karen, it's a mind-boggling array of programs. It's unbelievable. I think we get more bang for our buck out of the COA funding than anything else. It looks like the exercise program has gone up a little bit. Is that primarily because of the new swimming
No,
program?
that's because we lost the funding for the walking group. That has been paid for the last 2 years from Bay Path Elder Services. It's a really well-liked program. We get a lot of participation, and so we wanted to continue that, so that's why.
And I
there's
do
a
have one
bump.
bone to pick with you. In the Lifetime Learning Program, Dr. Tim Peltison comes from Wellesley to do your Dickens and your Jane Austen. And I saw in the Sherborn link that you don't note that he's a high school buddy and college roommate of mine, so.
Well, that's worth it.
I am personally offended at that. I just wanted to let you know.
Well, in the next link, it'll be in the front page.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
I want to make a point too, they, at least every week, sometimes multiple times, they bring a massive amount of food to the CM&D garage. I wish they'd stop doing it, because I think I've already gained my 15 pounds that everyone predicted I would when I started working there.
Well, you can
but
thank our friends at BJ's and
Kidding
Roach
aside,
Brothers.
it's very much appreciated by the crew down there.
Yeah.
There's some long days spent, and it's helpful.
I want to echo what Chuck Yon said, that you're doing a fantastic job and very much appreciated. And I hear from people praising all the work that's being done in this town. For the amount of money that we spend, the number of programs, the quality of the programs, the enthusiasm that these programs are being received, high marks all the way around. So I wanted to thank you.
Well, it's a team effort, and without Linda and Nan and Kathy and Ani and Lila, I couldn't do it. These women go above and beyond every single day to serve the seniors, and they love what they do, and I think it really shows. So I have a great team, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Budget?
Yep. All in favor? So, I mean, we're not really approving, we're recommending.
Recommending approval, right.
Recommending it. and
Yep.
Thank you,
we
gentlemen.
established the last time we can reopen anything, but I think this was a good one.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, next, somebody's gonna go up for CM&D.
Oh, wait, but-
I've been there before, you do.
So, I asked John to be here. I also asked Warren to be here, but maybe he's at home catching some sleep because they're coming in at 4 tomorrow morning. First, I wanted to just recognize both of them. John and Warren both started their employment with the town of Sherborn in early and mid 1978. So I won't say how old I am, but they remember me crawling around next door when they started. I don't know of any two other employees that have been around town that long. Maybe there's some at Pine Hill, I don't know. But I can say for myself, I'm lucky to be working with these guys. I'm lucky to be gaining the knowledge that they have of town that is irreplaceable. And I want to thank them for their service over the past almost year now with the transition down there. They've made my life a lot easier than it could have been. John, over the course of the past couple decades, has carried that department several times during transitions, and I think we owe him a huge bit of gratitude. He's not gone yet, but I want to take every opportunity I can to thank him.
Great, yeah, thank you, John.
And if anyone doesn't know him, that's John McAvoy. And I'll bring Warren in and embarrass him next time.
Thank you.
And John's meeting the crew at 4 a.m. to start treating the roads, if anyone's wondering what he's doing tonight. For my budget, I didn't level fund it. That would have been pretty hard to do. One of the biggest items, which shouldn't come as a surprise, because from that table I was questioning it the past couple of years, I actually attempted to fund snow and ice with some realistic numbers and use some realistic data, not just the 3-year average. I went back, I want to hand this out. I reprinted page 6.
Thanks, Sean.
What I did, I added the columns all the way back to 2011 for the snow and ice. Because there was a couple outliers that I wanted to point out. 2012 was a winter we really didn't have. There was, I don't have the data, I'm gathering that, and I'll have that from the Weather Service, but there was very little snow, there was very little ice events, and you can see that. The overtime dropped, materials dropped, but you can also see that there's a few items where we've been funding every year less than the furthest outlier that we have. So the road materials line item, we funded in 18 at $26,750. In 2012, a year we really didn't have a winter, we blew that. And when all the invoices come in the next couple of weeks, we've already blown that. Just to fill the salt shed with salt and sand, we already spend that. So to me, it makes more sense to at least adjust that to a realistic number. This is a budget, we should be budgeting it. I know we have the legal right to go over that, and we typically do, but to put a number in that's not even achievable for me, doesn't really do us much good. It also makes it hard to track when the number is so far out of whack. All the other budgets, you can look at the first page at the top level and you can compare how you did, what you requested versus your 3-year average versus the year before. We know we're gonna be 150 off each year. So it just throws that number off to where it's not, what you're requesting isn't really what you're expecting. So I bumped up a couple key numbers in there. I met with Jeff a few weeks ago to go through it. This budget really has no effect on what I'm gonna do at 4 a.m. tomorrow. John's gonna come in, we're gonna do our thing. It's not like we are budget conscious while we're going out and plowing roads. But I am in some of the key decisions I make. So I would prefer to track it and use, and I would think on the financial model, it makes more sense to put in what you expect. I know it's gonna have the illusion of a pretty good hit when everyone's looking at the overall for the town, but you're gonna fund it either way at the end of the year.
Sean and I went back and forth on this on the budget. And I had told Sean that we should leave it in there to bring it to the Board of Selectmen so that they could see his actual projection. But I would still recommend keeping it flat at the 80, I think it was 82.5 or something. So it'd be a reduction of 149,000. But that's what I was going to recommend, and it's based on the same reasons that I was recommending on the legal, because they could both be paid after the fact. Paul can better explain it.
Yeah, I want to explain the oddity in Massachusetts budgeting for snow and ice. There's a statute that says that communities can overspend snow and ice any year and then can repay it over a 2-year period. But it also says that you can't, and I'm oversimplifying here, you can't ever reduce that number.
That's what I had seen that as well.
You're locked in. So if you increase that number, you are stuck. That becomes the new floor. So because of that, communities across the state not just Sherborn, but as a general practice throughout the state, everybody's afraid to increase that number because that locks them in to a higher number every year. And the third thing I would say is that snow and ice is one of those variables that is almost unpredictable. So the prevailing wisdom is that you really cannot do an accurate prediction of what you're going to spend on snow and ice because there's so much chance, randomness. If a storm moves a little bit to the west or a little bit to the east, you have an entirely different outcome. So the idea, the way communities fund snow and ice is to maintain the floor. Sometimes these floors go back to the 1930s. Nobody wants to change it. But they maintain the floor as for what it is, and then they see what happened during that year, and then they've got 2 years now to figure out how to pay it and to catch up with that expense. So it's an odd practice. It's different from other types of line items, but I see it being so generally accepted to do it that way that I would not recommend that Sherborn do something different than what other communities do.
Yeah, and just historically, Paul, to reinforce what you're saying, going back to the 2011 data that you pulled together, Sean, 4 out of those 8 years, we would have at a $75,000 funding, the actuals would have been under it, including by $63,000 in that year that you mentioned, 2012. So,
Right, well, I think that as Paul said, the scary thing is lowering our baseline, or raising our baseline, because
Right.
we can never then come back and lower that if we start seeing less spending in snow and ice. I could understand maybe raising it from the 80,000, because that's woefully low, other than that 1 year, but I wouldn't go as high as the recommendation here. Like, so you're a little closer to actual budgeting, but not much. I wouldn't change it much, because I wouldn't want to lower that. I wouldn't want to raise the baseline above where we can never go back.
yeah, I like the baseline from last year, which was on snow removal contract, it was 10,845, because that is below all 8 years data. If we have a repeat of 2012,
Yeah.
a year with no snow,
Which lines count for the snow and ice? The whole thing, or what?
The whole sheet.
I think it's a total
It's the whole
budget,
sheet.
total budget.
Okay.
This whole sheet is snow and ice.
So
But I'm not sure which line you're looking at. But the total, just on the 3-year average, is 260,000. 3-year average.
Right, but there's certain
You
years.
budgeted 82.
Well, that's why I'm asking whether it's each
See,
line item can't be.
2012 is the only time you've been below what you budgeted last year.
Right.
Is it each line item that can't be?
No,
reduced,
no,
or
I
is
think
it-
it's just the budget in
It's the
total,
budget
right,
as a-
Paul?
as a
It's the
whole.
total.
Paul, can you clarify that? It's
Yes.
the budget in total.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
So you could move line items around if you needed
Yeah.
to. But what you're asking for in 2019, the 232, is above, as Chuck said, above 2011, above 2012, above 2013, above 2016.
Right.
So
And
that's,
But these are all-
that's too high of a number.
And
Yeah,
2014,
but we're also
yeah.
using current present value numbers.
right?
It's not like I went back and adjusted. But your 3-year average, I'm still 30,000 less.
Your 7-year average, your 245 out of the 7 years is below the 232.
Right, I wish I could get the labor rates out of the, from 7 years ago.
If you throw out 2012 and you throw out 2015, which is abnormally high, your budget of 80,000 for every other year is half of what we spent. 183, 220, 164, 172. So I understand George's point, but I think 80 is pretty low. 80 is roughly half of the historical spending all the way back 10 years.
But we're allowed to deficit spend so that we don't need to budget.
I understand it. We went through this before with police overtime, which is another unpredictable thing. You remember, George. You know, at some point, you also don't want to be under budgeting severely. Also, have reason to believe it's going to be back. I
I could see like raising it to 100,000 or something like that. So you still have a baseline that's fairly low, but but it's raising it to something that's giving a little more money into the budget.
Right. I mean,
But
it ultimately has nothing to do with the decisions I make. It's just,
Right.
on the back end of it, it makes looking at some of these other parts of the chart just totally deceiving.
I like 82364 is just a
And if
nice
you look,
number.
there's not a single line that I took in the 2019 that's higher than the 3-year average. I basically took the 3-year average and went just below it for the sake of just throwing numbers on there that look, I mean, we said advisory and finance came up with the trend budgeting, they wanted to do it. So I kind of went with that model and said, here's where that would land if this was any other budget.
But just because of the peculiarity of the law, I would say, if you want to spend more money on snow and ice, put it in the advisory committee, put the 20,000 that you want to add here, put it in the
reserve
advisory committee's
It
reserve
is.
fund.
It's
So
always
it's
been
there.
there. I don't want to spend more money, I want to spend less money. But I'm not spending less money because you budgeted me something that's unachievable. I want to be fiscally responsible, but that number doesn't help me get there.
Sean, the Swash Bay tight tank pumping, is that a snow and ice expense particularly, or
Yeah,
it's only snow and ice? It only relates to snow and ice?
no, there's non-snow and ice.
So
what
that's
that
I'm
is
saying. This number is only for snow and ice season? What you've got
Yeah,
on here?
that I put in there, yeah.
Okay.
After every storm, we gotta wash the trucks.
Yeah.
In Sherborn, we don't have public sewer, so it ends up in a tight tank, we ship it out. It hasn't been in the CM&D budget at all.
Yeah,
It was in a building budget, and it looked like septic
yeah.
repairs, and it's not.
But this is a year, that's what I'm asking you. Is this a year-round number, or is this a number just for snow season?
Much like many of the numbers that are here, they also show up in another sheet where they show up in the year-round.
Or you put a different number in the other sheet, right?
Yeah,
This is just,
I
that's what I'm
intend
trying to
to.
establish. You've carved out just the snow and ice portion of.
Right.
Okay.
well, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you've guessed.
I'm estimating what it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
I get that.
Again, it's gonna depend on the snow events, and it's a new item that hasn't, again, the error of just dumping it in with septic, you can't really trace it. You can't track it, because it got mixed up with all the septic pumping in town.
Do you want to go through the rest of the budget?
We should.
Let's do that.
it looks like there's an additional 85,000 over level funding.
Yeah, that's
If you
about
look at the
right.
master spreadsheet here.
Yeah,
That's,
that's about right.
85,000 on the departmental and then 149
on the snow and ice.
snow and ice. And we're,
Can somebody walk through what the changes are, please? David or Sean?
Sean,
So the personnel are kind of obvious. The biggest, this isn't the copy I printed, so. Most of the general operations stuff, I was using the 3-year. We kept vehicle maintenance, we bumped up vehicle maintenance to follow the 3-year rather than, I'm on page 3.
Okay, yeah.
Page 2, sorry, Form 3, page 2.
Form
Three.
Right.
Okay.
You'll notice we've been closer to 70 than 50. So I knocked that up to 60.
Is that true even though we have a new vehicle?
We always have new vehicles.
So, but the argument for the new vehicle
Right.
was that
We wouldn't
the
need
maintenance
any
costs were so
maintenance.
high the past couple of years because of these old vehicles. We need to get rid of the old vehicles and
Right.
get new vehicles. So shouldn't that number stay about the same?
Yeah.
Or go down.
So it's down. I put 60 and that's down.
'Cause
You
he's
might have
been-
budgeted 50, but you spent an average of 65.
Do we know where we are this year, Sharon? Through 18 on vehicle maintenance, do we know where we are in the budget?
Line item
so far
425-5242.
I have it as of last month, but take me a minute to dig it out.
CM&D.
Under 5,300 contractual services is line 425 5242 vehicle maintenance.
What's that? Overspent now. Yeah.
You're over 50 already.
Well, I was just looking at the department CMD, general, it's allocated 21, spent 25.
That's
No,
for
you're on
half
the
the
wrong
year.
line.
That's not right.
Oh.
That's not the line.
Which one?
Vehicles under, vehicle maintenance,
5,300, 425, 5242.
under contractual services, under general operations.
I don't have general operations.
It's the, Paul, it's the third,
It's the fourth page in the stapled package.
right.
The fourth page.
Oh, she's having trouble tracking it because it changed in the new, the numbers jumped around.
You mean highway general operations?
Yes, that's it.
Yes, yep.
We're looking at 5,300.
This is the one we're looking at, Paul? Yep.
I stumped the panel.
You did, we'll get it though. This is the downfall of changing
Better time.
systems, trying to chase it.
So last year it was 50, this year it's 60, that's the issue?
Yeah.
There it is. That's material.
Mike just asked what they've spent to date.
The question is whether it should be going down because of the approval of the new trucks.
But the 3-year actual is 65?
Right.
Thank you for your help,
Page.
so I could find it.
Probably not worth spending more time on.
No.
No, it's really not.
I think there's a lot of, there's some,
I think we're gonna have to come back to this budget anyway.
I think so too, because,
But that would be one question I'd be
Right.
concerned about.
I mean, right, because we're gonna wanna see the snow removal budget reduced.
Yep.
There's some large increases on land management, Sean. What are those for?
So,
Tree service contract,
let me get to that page so I see the. As you know, Eversource went through town and tagged about 220 trees. After numerous public meetings, they knocked that list down to about 180. They're in the process of cutting those trees down now. When they leave, no one's gonna notice they were here, because there's still twice as many dead trees hanging over the roads. Eversource just chose the ones that put their wires at risk, not our roads. They were protecting their asset. Just in the course of, since the last meeting to now, the town has spent the better part of about $8,000 to $10,000 picking up trees or cutting down trees that had a label on them that we're waiting for Eversource to get. So that's free trees they were gonna take, didn't get to it in time.
And they fell.
They fell, or one split so bad we had to do an emergency takedown, which cost us about $4,000. Middle of the day, take one tree down. Because of the drought, 2 years of drought, and almost 3 years of devastation from the caterpillars, they're dying at an alarming rate.
that makes sense as an
They're,
increase.
so if we don't budget it, we'll spend it. That's almost a guarantee. It just costs twice as much to take them down under an emergency service.
I think for public safety reason, I agree with an increased tree contract. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
It's much cheaper to go out to bid, because we're probably gonna put a pretty decent list, not to upset a bunch of people, but it's gonna be a sizable list, and we get a much, much, much better rate.
What's contractual services?
So Contractual services, it should almost be renamed in this budget, because that's the lawn mowing
Okay.
that several years ago got farmed out.
Why is that going up so much? From 32
So
to 50?
it was headed up, and then they picked up the extra mowing of the caustic property, which was never being mowed.
Why is it being mowed now?
It's being mowed now
Why, though?
because it needs to be maintained.
Okay. So, but I don't understand, it wasn't being done before?
No. Or it was being done by land management.
The original contract didn't.
It wasn't
include
part of the
that property.
contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how the contract went up that fast, I'm not sure. I wasn't here, and we're gonna rebid the whole thing. And we're in the early stages of considering to pull some of that right out of the contract and put it back into land management.
And some of the tree service contract, I assume, line item tree, 53112, tree pruning was 8,500. You've simply moved that into a different budget item, I
Yeah,
assume.
I did that, when me and Jeff met, we chose to just combine it.
Right.
There's no real reason to split it out. I mean,
Yeah.
if we hire stumpies to come through and take 5 trees down and prune 4, it doesn't need to be split out.
So that 8,500 is moved into contractual services.
Right. No, tree service contract.
Tree service, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
The 50 I put in there for contractual services is basically to cover what we're contracted. I hope to be able to back that out, but at the moment, to fund what we contracted to do until we rebid it, that's what it is.
You see, there was no actuals down there under the tree pruning, so we
Yeah.
weren't tracking costs and cover that.
Right. Phantom category.
Under personnel, did you double the overtime for snow and ice? Is that what it looks like?
Yeah, that's part of the snow and ice bump.
Oh, okay. Which I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's hard the way it tracks, because it comes
They-
off of the
they
sheet
come on the
5.
different sheets, yeah.
And then jumps into a line on, Form 3. So, we can we can push that back. It would have naturally just taken, I think it was set to take the 2018 number plus the 2%. So if we choose,
Okay,
we
that's,
can
yeah, that's just in the snow, okay,
take that back.
right.
There's something else notable I wanted to point out.
Is it the traffic detail for the police, was that?
If you're jumping back to highway, right?
Yeah.
Page 3. So, road materials is a big line item. If everyone recalls, my predecessor for years came and said, we're underfunding the roads, we're underfunding the roads, we're underfunding the roads. Chapter 90 is not enough. So we did 2 things a couple years ago. We supplemented Chapter 90 last year with a huge influx. Some to be borrowed, some free cash to get more road work done. But the materials are also bumped up. So we bumped it up to 60. It didn't get spent in 17. I can't really vouch for why. But that 60 we want to hold, because that's the part of the budget that keeps you from getting into the point where you need to ask for $400,000 or $500,000 to catch up.
But you haven't spent it, or it hasn't been spent in the last 3 years, what we're looking at here.
It wasn't available 2 and 3 years ago. It was available in 17, he didn't spend it. The 18 is going to get spent.
Okay.
Because we already, whether on the books it is or not, we already blew all the way through our Chapter 90 doing Coolidge Street and into the 450, just with Coolidge, Kendall, Speen. So as soon as we start up this spring, we're already going to dip. And we've dipped into that some. We bought some materials that are waiting. We did some repairs on Green Lane and Rockwood, and there's a lot more to do. But we have to be doing the repairs or we just fall behind. And then emergency repairs come out of there too, if they're not Chapter 90. And one notable one if anyone happened to drive by on Sunday morning, we were out fixing a road washout on Maple Street at Green Lane because the road started falling into the field. So that's going to be a pretty expensive fix. If we can keep most of it in-house, it's going to hit that. That's where it hits. We already have the labor and the equipment. We need the materials to fix it. And with more work, obviously, there's more police details needed. It's obvious. If we're on the road, we need the police details. So I held the police detail line with the tree. It might be underfunded, depending on how much tree work we do and where it is. But I bumped up on this end of it. Same line item, different area of the budget. Those are my biggest changes.
I've heard that there's progress being made on a new contract with the workers at the Seaman-D department, if you will. Are those covered in this budget and funded in this budget, or is that something pending approval of the contract and we'll add in later from some other source?
You want me to answer that right here?
No.
No.
Form 5 will spell that out for you if you read it.
It's not.
The last page, before the notes.
It's not covered in here, but I got a note to Sharon to adjust it to reflect that contract.
Yeah, we're gonna just need to do this again, but this is a helpful starting conversation.
Right.
Yeah, this is terrific detail.
I mean, if the
Thank you.
direction is puts the snow and ice back where it was, I'll just do that. It'll take 5 minutes. I wanted to bring the conversation up because I brought it up each year, and
It's a good conversation.
right, it doesn't affect the operation really at all.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Terrific, thank you.
What? Can you hold just 1 sec while I verify something?
On this?
Yeah. No, it's correct.
Yeah, we're not-
She already adjusted it.
Yeah, we're not gonna,
Thanks, John.
do this anyway. Okay, next is consideration of capital items. Who's making that presentation?
There are
What
no
about the police
capital.
budget? Didn't we go
Um,
to-
That
It was
was
moved.
struck from the agenda before you got here.
Oh,
Yeah, so we have no capital items. We didn't take that off the agenda though, did we?
No,
Take it off, okay.
no,
We got one NOI, I guess. Is that in our package? It's in the NOI package.
I wanted to leave it on in case Sean mentioned his capital items.
I didn't see any NOIs in my package.
These are the ones from last week.
It's the pack, oops.
So this is,
Which one is it? It's number 15, the change from,
yeah, this is something that, this is something I asked for.
That's what we got last week's meeting.
It's just a change in the name of this board to the Select Board from a Board of Selectmen, just to make it neutral, the way many towns have made their board, gender neutral in terms of its name, more modern, and I'm throwing it out there for discussion. I think it's a good idea. Doesn't change any powers, duties, individuals, or anything else.
And since I suggested this last year, I certainly agree with it.
Did you suggest it last year?
I did.
I knew I got the idea from somewhere.
And I thought, when it came up for discussion last year, 2 former selectmen, select persons, weren't in favor of it. I thought Kitty and Grace both didn't like the idea.
See, I don't even
No?
remember that discussion.
No, I think that was a discussion on elder housing versus elderly.
I think you're right about that.
I thought it was select board.
No, I don't think so.
Elder is more respectful than elder.
There was a quick
It
discussion
should be
about
Board of
it.
Elders.
About select board?
It was a very quick discussion one night, not an agenda item,
Yeah, it was a very quick
and
discussion.
it wasn't part of the budget
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
So it just moves us into the modern era, that's all.
yeah.
I just say that the MMA hasn't been recommending this yet. We did a survey of female select people, and the upshot from them was that they, as a whole, did not support that change at this point in time. So MMA hasn't taken a formal position on this one way or the other, leaving it to each community to take a position.
They're slow. We want to be on the leading edge ahead of MMA.
All right, does anybody else have any comments, discussion? We don't have to kill this. I guess,
I think
I would just look for a
leave it
motion
on
to
there.
put it on the warrant. Does anybody second that?
Second?
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstained? So I don't know. I think it was 4-0.
4-0 with either an abstention or I don't care. I'm not sure which it was.
I'm just reflecting the MMA position, which was not to take a position. So since I'm the MMA, I'm just trying to.
Okay. Town administrator report.
I don't have anything at this time.
Consideration of payroll warrant. Do we have a payroll warrant this week? Okay. Yeah, we should start putting this in the packet. Paul made a point last week of wanting to see this in the packet if we're gonna vote on it, yeah. But we have it in front of us now. Do we have any,
I haven't seen it.
yeah, I'll pass it around. This is from the past 2 weeks.
Are we still having an executive session?
We are planning to have an executive session, yes. Paul, if you want to look at it.
Somewhere in this mess is the agenda.
Want to look at the agenda?
Yeah, just to see, you don't have any minutes?
There's no minutes to.
And you're proposing a
Did
meeting?
do we vote this, or are we gonna vote this, or no?
We need to vote it, yeah?
Yeah, we should vote it. I just want to make sure, so everything on that is accurate as far as how days are allocated, et cetera? Sharon? Yes? Okay.
I'd move approval.
Okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor? Okay. Okay. Any selectmen items for anybody? No?
No.
No selectmen reports? Any minutes? No minutes. We've got a meeting, I think we set our February meetings last week too, didn't we?
Yeah, the 8th
So
and
they-
22nd, I believe.
At 2/8 and 2/22? Okay, and those can go on next week's agenda. And then this agenda came out before we'd even voted on those, I think, right? You had double loaded the agendas because the meetings were so close. And now we have, okay, let's
So
see.
we already established the meeting of the 25th?
The
Yes.
meeting on the
Yes.
25th was already established, and also February 8th and February 22nd. Okay. Some motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for purposes of discuss, under Chapter 38, Section 21-3, for purposes to discuss strategy with respect to potential threatened litigation, since an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the town, if so declared by the chair, and this concerns library matters. The board will not return to open session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Second, Mr. Colleen. We'll now have a roll call. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Yan? Me, aye. Mr. Colleen?
Aye.
And Mr. Morrow?
Aye.
or as it says here, just moral?
I see that. I don't have an official,
You're not a mister yet. You have to be here a couple meetings before we call you mister. All right, having passed by a vote of 5-0, the open session is now closed. We will not return to open session. We are now in executive session. Thank you all for being here.
We were trying to do away with the